On November 22nd, 2023, a man ran out onto a rooftop in Culiacan, Mexico, wearing nothing but his pants. Elite military forces spent hours surrounding a single safe house in a quiet neighborhood, and when they finally closed their perimeter, the fugitive they trapped reigned as the most feared enforcer inside the entire Sinaloa Cartel. His name, Néstor Isidro Pérez Salas, carried immense weight across Mexico. Fearful locals whispered his moniker, El Nini. Warning shots cracked over his head, echoing through the streets, and he instantly stopped running, raised both hands, and surrendered without firing a single round. That passive surrender clashed violently with his reputation. Court records describe a man accused of unthinkable acts of violence against anyone who crossed his path. Why, then, did the cartel's most brutal enforcer give up without a fight? Today, he bargains with the government seeking his permanent confinement, relying on a single asset, the very sons of El Chapo he once shielded. Before the rooftop, before the surrender, Pérez Salas climbed the ranks as an ambitious recruit within the Sinaloa Cartel security network. By the time military forces cornered him, he reached 31 years of age, having spent over a decade serving the organization once commanded by Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, U.S. Federal filings identify him as the operational chief of security for Los Chapitos, the violent faction run by Chapo's own sons. Which meant that, when the organization needed someone eliminated quietly, leaders summoned El Nini. They never sought a compromise. They wanted to make an example. And in May of 2017, justice officials say he and his crew captured and executed members of a rival syndicate. If the bloody ascent of El Nini intrigues you, hit the subscribe button, because the story of how his own leaders turned on him takes an even stranger direction from here. That month, according to government lawyers, Pérez Salas and his crew captured 3 men from a rival syndicate. No shootout erupted, and no chaos disrupted the operation. They acted with cold precision. They tortured the captives for information, then executed them one by one under his direct supervision, leaving no witnesses behind to contradict their narrative. For the cartel, this demonstration proved his willingness to execute the ugliest tasks. For federal investigators building a case years later, it formed the baseline of a pattern that repeatedly escalated. By October of 2023, the target shifted from rival gunmen to a DEA confidential informant along with 10 of his family members and associates, including a 13-year-old boy. Pérez Salas suspected someone was communicating with the DEA, triggering a swift directive: seize the confidential informant, along with his family members and associates, to ensure complete silence. Operatives under his command abducted 11 individuals that October, including an American citizen and a 13-year-old boy whose only connection to the cartel involved a family tie to the targeted source. 8 of those captives never returned. Both the informant and the boy perished. Justice Department officials eventually built a major portion of their homicide indictment around this single operation, exposing how easily the organization erased an entire family to protect a single secret. Yet, this mass abduction represents only a fraction of the darkness hiding within the government's files. The files detail a culture where human life held no transactional value whatsoever. According to the same U.S. court documents, Pérez Salas and his men were instructed to shoot a woman on behalf of the syndicate. Instead of a quick execution, they devised a different purpose for her. They injected her repeatedly with small doses of fentanyl, not to end her life immediately, but to test the potency of various drug batches. She died from the consecutive injections, transforming her death into a mere clinical metric, a way to calibrate a lethal product before exporting it to American streets. This single detail explains why federal authorities in New York showed no interest in a quiet, rapid plea agreement once they secured custody. They sought severe accountability and punishment reflecting the gravity of the allegations in his file. For years, both Mexican and American agencies pursued him without success. The U.S. government issued a $3 million bounty for his capture, representing more wealth than most rank-and-file members would ever encounter, yet silence prevailed. He remained hidden inside Culiacan, shielded by the very apparatus he protected through violence. Then came the rooftop encounter, the undignified surrender in November 2023. Whisper campaigns immediately suggested that internal betrayal delivered him to the military. Mexican officials never verified those rumors, maintaining that special forces executed a precise, targeted operation. The timeline, however, reveals a telling coincidence. His arrest coincided with peak pressure on the Guzman family. 6 months later, Mexico extradited him to the United States on May 25, 2024. This marked the end of his freedom. 5 days after landing on American soil, Pérez Salas stood inside a federal arraignment room in New York. According to eyewitness accounts, tears streamed down his face in front of his family as he entered his plea. Not guilty to every single charge. If this case commands your attention, tap the like button, as this support helps others discover a narrative that grows increasingly complex. Those charges span drug trafficking, homicide, and weapons violations, with one specific figure shaping his entire defense strategy. The firearms violations alone carry a mandatory minimum of 30 years in federal prison. This means that even under the most favorable terms his defense team could broker, 3 decades remains the starting point, not the limit. But when the crime involves the targeted elimination of witnesses and children, the math changes completely. Blood crimes don't move through a trial room the same way drug trafficking charges do, and federal attorneys have shown little appetite for letting those charges go. His lawyers recognized the bleak arithmetic immediately. Shortly after his initial plea, reports emerged that his defense team initiated quiet conversations with the Justice Department regarding an alternative path. This dynamic separates his case from standard cartel prosecutions. Throughout 2025 and into 2026, the court sealed almost every filing, hiding the proceedings from public view due to the sensitive nature of the information. In mid-2025, Mexican journalist Angel Hernandez reported that plea talks between Pérez Salas and U.S. authorities encountered severe friction. Usually, the government trades leniency for operational intelligence when dealing with high-level drug distribution. However, when an individual faces allegations of direct violence, the standard playbook falls apart. The Justice Department refuses to treat brutal acts of coercion with the same flexibility they afford to financial or logistics crimes. This friction created a stalemate that kept the files locked away from public eyes while both sides calculated their next moves. While Pérez Salas waited in a New York detention center, the leaders he once shielded structured their own survival strategies. In July of 2025, Ovidio Guzman Lopez, one of El Chapo's prominent sons, pleaded guilty to federal narcotics charges inside a Chicago tribunal. 5 months later, in December of 2025, his brother Joaquin Guzman Lopez followed suit, admitting to large-scale drug distribution and leading a continuing criminal enterprise. 2 heirs to the world's most infamous illicit empire chose cooperation over a high-profile trial. This development raises a haunting question for the operative who once commanded their protective forces. If the leaders themselves eagerly bargain to secure their own freedom, what value does loyalty hold for the enforcer who executed their most ruthless commands? The shockwaves from those guilty pleas quickly rippled far beyond the Guzman family. In May of 2026, reports in the newspaper El País detailed how a major U.S. investigation into Ruben Rocha Moya, the former governor of Sinaloa, originated directly from the expanding Chapitos cases currently unfolding in American tribunals. This development demonstrates how deeply the probe penetrated since Pérez Salas first entered the federal system. Cooperation from syndicate insiders, whether from the Guzman heirs themselves or from their former security chief, no longer merely shapes an individual's prison fate. It actively destabilizes Mexican political structures. Investigators now possess strong incentive to continue pulling at these sensitive political threads. This represents the transaction Pérez Salas reportedly weighs in his cell. Yet, his remaining cards are high stakes. With 2 of the main Guzman brothers already in custody, he cannot trade simple organizational structure. Instead, his value lies in the logistics, the unrecorded routes, the corrupt officials, and the unsolved disappearances that only he witnessed. Government attorneys no longer need assistance proving that the Chapitos directed a global narcotics empire. The brothers' own admissions establish that fact for the record. What Pérez Salas commands is something far more precise and hazardous. He knows the secret runways hidden in the Sierra Madre, the specific police commanders on the payroll, and the exact locations of clandestine graves holding those who crossed the cartel. These specific secrets retain their value because no sweeping guilty plea from a Guzman heir can reveal them. No formal plea agreement has surfaced, and no signed cooperation document exists outside of a record system that remains strictly hidden. His case maintains a level of absolute secrecy that is rare, even when measured against other sensitive drug cartel prosecutions. This extraordinary level of discretion indicates that whatever intelligence he offers carries immense weight for international security. Whether he ultimately testifies against his former compatriots, or whether federal lawyers decide his violent acts preclude any leniency, stays uncertain as the calendar moves deeper into 2026. What remains clear is the stark reality of his current existence. The former enforcer who oversaw human experimentation and brutal executions now waits in a solitary cell, possessing only the secrets of an empire that likely already abandoned him to save itself. He is entirely alone. If this narrative stays with you, subscribe to our channel, because vast chapters of this hidden war remain sealed, waiting to surface.